Our reading today is from the book of John, chapter 20, 11 through 18. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. Here ends the reading.
And now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable unto you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Easter is such a wonderful day. We enjoy the fragrance of flowers. We celebrate the commitment symbolized in baptismal waters. We welcome back the colors of spring. We emerge from our Lenten doldrums with a renewed sense of commitment to new life, which we see all around us. And this weekend, we imagine what it might be like to live just 3 days after the death of a loved one. The friends and family of Gary Kinsley, who died on Friday, know what this is like especially. One of the football players told me at the vigil on Friday night at Wilkins Hall that it was times like these when you realize what's truly important. So true. And it's especially sad when we learn the lesson in such a hard way. While we don't expect Gary to come back after 3 days and walk among us, we wonder how we might be different because of his life, because of his death. How might we enter this new era without him? This is the conundrum all of us go through when we encounter the death of a loved one. How do we go on? We know we need to let go, but we want so desperately to hold on. We fear that letting go will mean that we'll not be properly honoring his or her memory. Mary went to the garden on Easter morning. She expected to see a tomb, a dead body, and a visceral reminder of the agony of her beloved Jesus. We can imagine that she went there with spices and flowers to anoint Jesus' body and send him on his way to the next life. I can imagine she psyched herself up for this. It was not a pretty sight to see him on the cross. And now in the tomb for 3 days, it would have been even more gruesome. I imagine her needing to remind herself, it's not him, really. He's not there anymore. It's just a body. Many of us have had that same experience at a funeral home. There's a serenity in knowing that the pain is over for our dearly departed, and we live through our own pain in the aftermath. And so, as Mary tentatively approached the garden tomb, she found that the stone was rolled away and the body was gone. Of course, she was upset. Who would steal a body? What else could they do to him that they hadn't already done? and to add insult to injury, she couldn't do the only thing that she wanted to do to give herself some closure. She just wanted to clean him up a little bit and say a final prayerful goodbye. But alas, the tomb was empty. Well, we know what happened next. Mary saw the risen Jesus in the garden. Was it real? Was he a ghost? Was he just the gardener imitating Jesus' voice? Was she not seeing straight through her grief? But he called her by name, Mary. And she knew. But what did she know? She knew that this was Jesus who had conquered death. Okay, so now what? Was he going to make things all better? Was he going to stick around? Was he going to give some more wisdom? Or was he going to pass his mantle on to others, to Mary in particular? What does this life mean? Last June, I went to the island of Iona in the Hebrides, off the coast of Scotland. Iona is where St. Columba established a monastery in the 6th century of the Common Era. Ruins of that ancient monastery and abbey still exist. In the last century, portions of it have been restored, and it's now opened as a peace and justice retreat center. It has been a pilgrimage site for 1,500 years in whatever state of repair it's been in. It's often called a thin place, where the veil between life and God is quite close. People come to Iona to connect with the mystery that is God. They come to mark a milestone in their lives. They come to scatter the ashes of a loved one. They come to be renewed and to recommit themselves to a faithful and fruitful life. On that remote island steeped in history and mystery, we see not only God, but look to see ourselves with new eyes, those of us pilgrims who get lucky enough to go there. I was there during my sabbatical with no real agenda other than to let go and to experience this thin place. Well, truth be told, I did have a little bit of an agenda. In my suitcase was a small stone urn with some of the ashes of our dear UBC sister, Jan Bienhoff. As part of my week there, we went on a day-long pilgrimage and walked around the island. We stopped at holy sites, the cross that marked the slaughter of monks by the Vikings in the 9th century. We visited the ruins of the nunnery, where we contemplated the many women who have influenced us in our lives. We stopped by a hermit's cave, where we might seek insight and focus. We paused at a crossroads and contemplated the choices we've made in our lives when we've come at a crossroads. And finally, we reached St. Columba's beach. This is where Columba was said to have landed his boat on Iona. He had been fleeing Ireland. He had been the leader of scribes in Ireland, but when a dispute erupted, over a psalm translation which he oversaw, hundreds of his monks had been slaughtered. He fled in shame, stopping at islands along the way and looking back at dear old Ireland. It is said that when he arrived at Iona, he looked back and could no longer see his beloved homeland. And so that was where he needed to make his stand in his new life. He wept when he could no longer see Ireland, and legend is that his tears fell on the rocks, turning them green, of course. And if you look close enough throughout the island of Iona, you can find pieces of green marble, some of the oldest rock in the world. The beach is filled at St. Columba's Beach with rocks, not sand. The stones are smooth and jagged, brown and red and green and white. As we approached the shore, we saw how people had taken the rocks and put them in a little field and made a little labyrinth out of them. Another had put a cairn of rocks in one place. Another had made a design out of colored rocks, making it look like a grave mound. It's hard not to look down and pick up a nice rock that you'd like to take home. There's so much history there, so much beauty, so much light, so much enlightenment, such an ancient connection with the water and the shore and the pressure on the stones, rendering them a certain shape and design. We wondered what insight others had seen on that beach. Think about a stone. It takes heat and pressure and time to make it into what it is. It's tossed and turned and heated and cooled to attain its shape and hue. Many of us are like that. We are who we are because of the tossing and the turning we have done in our lives. We're smoothed by the sands of time. We're polished by patience. We're cut and cracked by tragedy. Soon we were all on the beach with piles of stones in our hands and weighing down our pockets. We're encouraged to take a favorite stone by our guides, one that spoke to us the most. We're told to pick it up, hold its weight, feel its presence, feel its firmness, and then to think about the things that we hold. Think about the gifts that we have. Think about the challenges that we faced. And then we were encouraged to take that stone and then toss it into the water. It's not good to hold on to that which we need to release, said our guides. Throw it into the water so we are no longer defined by the weights that we hold. We cling to material things, so let them go. Remember that life is a gift, and we are given this life as a gift that is to be shared. Take the stone and throw it into the water. Someone else will get that stone later. Let go of what holds you back. Let go of even what's most comfortable. Take it and throw it away. Someone else will find it and have value in it. You were given this life as a gift. It's not yours to hoard. It's yours to give away. I think of the disciples on that first Sunday morning after the death of Jesus. At the garden or holed away in that upper room, they were cut by tragedy. They were jagged by experience. They were smooth in the old ways of dealing with the world. And they knew precious little about going forward. The Easter message is that there is always a way to go forward. And the disciples eventually found it. There's a way of moving on, but before you can do that, you need to let go of the old ways. Let go of that which weighs you down. Let go of that which burdens you. The reason Jesus said to Mary, "Don't hold me. Don't cling to me." David Bartlett, in his workshop a month or so ago, said that the only Jesus who lives is the Jesus who changes. Don't look back and try to recapture the old way. Look forward and don't hinder the journey. What holds you down? What old behaviors or old beliefs weigh in your pockets? What comfortable ways have held you in check, held you back from being whom God called you to be? Jesus died on the so-called Good Friday, an execution carried out by the state in collusion with religion. They thought they could use the ultimate weapon of violence and fear to not only kill Jesus, but to so scare people that they would run away and hide if they knew it was good for them. That's the way of the world. It's always been that way. It was carved into the rocks on the ground. It was battered by the sea. everyone knew that this was the way of the world. But on Easter, God rolled away the stone in front of the tomb. God rolled away the stones of fear and violence. God broke clear the stones of time and upset the order of the world. And people began to do something different. They took the things that made sense of their world and tossed it into the figurative sea. And they embraced a new way of encountering the world. They chose not to let the old ways define them. They started a movement. This movement said not only that death is not the final answer, but that evil is not the way of God. Fear is not the way of God's people. Prejudice is just another rock that we hold on to. We are to embrace something new. We are embracing hope. We are embracing peace. We are embracing justice. We are embracing mercy. We are embracing compassion. We are no longer to be weighed down by our old ways. We are going to let them go, tossing them into the sea. They no longer have power over us. Instead, we're going to embrace the ways of discipleship and look at the world in a new way. We're going to embrace a way of living that transforms enemies into friends. We're going to embrace a way of living that brings hope to a hopeless people. We're going to embrace a way of living that sets prisoners free and declares the acceptable year of God's favor. We're going to remember the best of a loved one and use it as a springboard to be the best person, the best people that we can be. That's what Easter is about. It's about letting go of the old shackles of your life and holding on to the new perspective that does bring life and hope and love to a world in need. Anita, we have seen you take on the waters of baptism. It's a ritual that's older than Christianity. And you are now committed and connected with all those who have gone before and all those who have gone after. You have given us a great gift in witnessing your commitment and the symbol of your commitment. It's a way of symbolizing the fact that you have let go of an old way of life and are holding on to a new one. We do this by immersion because it's a way of symbolizing all-encompassing, all-embodied commitment. The old you is completely washed away, and the new one emerges, just as you did, sputtering and amazed at the new perspective that we all see dripping wet before us. As we look at you, we remember our own vows, our own longing. We remember those things that we still need to leave behind, those barriers that we have. And vicariously through you, we emerge once again in newness of life. So thank you. When the disciples entered into the days and weeks and years that followed that first Easter, they had to constantly let go of the old way of doing things. The Acts of the Apostles tells the story of how churches were divided over how to live in the world, how to govern themselves, how to witness to the new revelation of God in their lives. And some were more successful than others. They needed to not only let go of their old lives, but cling to something new. This is what they discovered in their communities of faith. They discovered a new and renewed way of being in the world, and it was good news indeed. As I was instructed, I took the weight of that stone urn out of my suitcase, and I buried it in a special place on the island of Iona. Today it remains there, mingled with the flowers of the nunnery garden, where women go to reconnect with their most important relationships. And as I buried that stone, I was able to let go a bit of the burden that I was carrying. It was an honor to carry this stone urn of ashes and to fulfill her family's wishes. It also marked a change in the way that I addressed the rest of the trip. This burial, this letting go, gave a sense of closure. Our loved ones would not want us to stop our lives. They would want us to remember to live a better and more fulfilling life because of their presence. That, my friends, is a resurrection. So that's what I focused on in my remaining days there on the island of Iona. I walked the stone labyrinth at St. Columba's Beach to contemplate what I was willing to let go of and what I was willing to hang on to. As we contemplated what we left behind on that beach, on the island of Iona, we were encouraged by our guides to not only let go of the old, but to cling to something new as well. And we were encouraged to pick up a stone that symbolized our new life. And invariably, the stone was a different color and a different shape than the one that we had taken before. I brought a stone just like this to Ellie and Dave and to Estelle from that very beach. But it was only a symbol of a new life that we seek to live. At the end of this service, I invite you to come forward to this table. And you'll see here stones. Take one that speaks to you. They're all different colors. They're all different shapes. They all have different stories. Take one and take it home with you to symbolize the newness that you would like to create in yourself, the newness that you experience in this Easter Sunday. May it remind you of this day. May it remind you of your baptismal vows. May it remind you of your commitments. May it remind you of all those that you hold dear. May it remind you of who you long to be. It can go in your pocket. It can live on your desk. It can live on a home altar. It can even live on the piano keyboard. It's a symbol of who you want to be. But not only that, it's also a symbol that you do not do this alone, because there are several people here who will take stones with them and be committed to a new life. You seek to embrace a new life on this Easter Sunday, surrounded by others who have made similar commitments. Sisters and brothers, on Easter Sunday, God, through Jesus, showed that the ways of this world do not have ultimate power. Rather, when we connect with a power beyond ourselves that is always benevolent, always healing, always good, then we can face the world with renewed hope and life. If we let go of all those burdens which impede our growth and weigh us down, then we're freed to pick up those behaviors, those thoughts, and those actions which will lead to healing and hope. The good news of Easter is certainly that Christ has risen. But the even better news is that because Christ has risen, or in evidence that Christ has risen, there is a part of us that has risen too. Tossed, tattered, and torn as we are polished to bring new life to a world in need. We let go of that death-clinging ways and hold on to new life emerging today. That's what Easter is all about. That's how Christ lives. So when we proclaim the mystery that Christ has risen, our actions say that Christ has risen indeed. And so we say the mystery of faith. Christ has risen.
Christ has risen indeed.
Amen.